Hi, I'm Greg Zeschuk from the Blind Enthusiasm Brewing Company, and I'm here today to talk a bit about our substantially complete vertical tasting box that'll be releasing shortly, and talking about the 2019, 2021, 2023 substantially complete beers. As you're probably aware, or maybe you're not aware, substantially complete is a cross-section of our mixed fermentation program, taking the best of what we do every year, or in this case, every 2 years. So Doug Chiknita is the head brewer and blender at Blind Enthusiasm. Doug, what's the difference between these three beers? They're quite different, but they're really similar.
Yeah, so as you said, Substantially Complete is a cross-section of the beers and our mixed fermentation program at any given time. So these different vintages really highlight that, and getting them together will give you the ability to taste and see those differences, as well as seeing them how they cellar. So the first year, 2019, was this was one of our very first blends. So we were only able to blend this with a single vintage from our first year of production of mixed fermentation. So you'll get to taste like a glimpse into the past and the early days of what we're tasting.
And also something that's like, this is 5 years old.
Yes.
It's crazy old.
Yes.
Like in the world of beer, this is a unicorn.
Yeah. It's not as common at all, really, where a brewery will cellar it in their professional cellars and then re-release it where you can get them.
Yeah.
So you get to see how a beer changed over time, especially if you're familiar with this from the early days. Moving into 2021, this was a couple years later. So we expanded our barrel rooms, the types of barrels we were working with. So with this one, we got to explore different vintages, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 when we were blending, as well as different barrel types. So this one does have a highlight of some of the original barrels that we used in the first batch of Substantially Complete, some new red wine barrels, and then a small amount of cognac barrel, which you can taste.
Yeah, I find the cognac is a really neat dimension, because like it's the same, but then suddenly there's this different thread running through the beer. It's really we've done a cognac beer de Charance, one of our most popular beers, really particular flavor. There's a hint of that in here, which is different than like I kind of forgot that was there until I tried it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's really, really prominent.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. When you try them side by side, it really is a good way to see the differences. And at that time, Charance was one of our best beers. So taking one of the barrels that went into that and using part of it in this really highlights, like, that does add dimension and different character to those beers. Moving into 2023, which is our most recent vintage and is going to be released on December 12th.
2024.
2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do cellar the beers 1 year before we release them, just for the carbonation, the development of the beer.
Yeah.
But with 2023, we're really hitting our stride with the mixed fermentation beer, but the time allows us to play with many vintages. So this one is a blend of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And with a little less emphasis on the different types of barrels, we did use some freshly empty red wine barrels, but a lot of neutral barrels. But this one really highlights the fermentative qualities and the fruitiness that you can get naturally through that. So it's a really bright, juicy, fruity, a little bit more pronounced acidity compared to the other ones, but very unique in its own right in this path of tasting the different vintages.
Right, and you and I both also thought like this one just we've been doing this for a while now. Like we've been brewing for, oh my goodness, I was like over 6 years, and so we've got all these beers. We're seeing how they sort of cellar. This one's going to cellar wonderfully. Like it's got a really lot of structure. Like you said, a bit of tannin. Like it's one that's going to like we'll be doing this 10 years from now and saying this is still good to drink, basically.
Yeah, it's the combination of chemical process. The different barrels we use, and then how we blended it. It really does have all the elements that make for something that could cellar, and we'll probably do a video like this a few years from now, highlighting and getting to compare where this one ended up.
Yeah, so cool. This is we're gonna have a box with these three beers in them, so you, the consumer, can purchase this. I gotta plug our beers, but that's one of the cool things. Like very few people can do verticals of beers, release them to the public. We'll have it on our direct-to-consumer site. It's a way to try a really neat range of beers and see how, time has affected the brewery itself. Like you said, we've gotten better at what we do. We've had different options at our fingertips to make these beers, and it's, led to some really fun things to try.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy them.